Grace and peace be unto you from God our Father. This week we celebrate Thanksgiving, so I thought I would do something a little bit different this week and share some stories with you that are about thankfulness and those sharing others with others. The folded napkins. I try not to be biased, but I have my doubts about hiring Stevie. His placement counselor assured me that he would be a good, reliable busboy. But I had never hired a mentally handicapped employee, and I wasn't sure I wanted one. I wasn't sure how my customers would react to Stevie. He was short, a little dumpy, with the smooth facial features and thick-tongued speech of Down syndrome. I wasn't worried about most of my truckers because truckers don't generally care who busses tables. As long as the meatloaf platter is good and the pies are homemade, everything was fine. The four-wheel drivers were not the ones that concerned me. The mouthy college kids traveling to school, the yuppie snobs who secretly polished their silverware with napkins for fear of catching some dreaded truck stop germ, the pairs of white-shirted businessmen on expense accounts who think every truck stop waitress wants to be flirted with. I knew those people would be uncomfortable around Stevie, so I closely watched him for the first few weeks. I shouldn't have worried. After the first week, Stevie had my staff wrapped around his stubby little finger, and within a month, my regular truckers had all adopted him as their official truck stop mascot. After that, I really didn't care what the rest of the customers thought of him. He was like a 21-year-old in blue jeans and Nikes, eager to laugh and eager to please, but fierce in his attention to his duties. Every salt and pepper shaker was exactly in its place. Not a breadcrumb or coffee spill was visible when Stevie had gotten done with the table. Our only problem was persuading him to wait to clean a table until after the customers were finished. He would hover in the background, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, scanning the dining room until a table was empty. Then he would scurry to the empty table and carefully bust dishes and glasses into the cart, and he would meticulously wipe the table up with a practiced flourish of his rag. If he thought a customer was watching him, his brow would pucker with added consternation. Stevie took pride in doing his job exactly right, and you had to love how hard he tried to please each and every person he met. Over time, we learned that he lived with his mother, a widow who was disabled after repeated surgeries for cancer. They lived on their Social Security benefits in public housing about 2 miles from the truck stop. Their social worker, who stopped to check on him every so often, admitted they had fallen between the cracks. Money was tight, and what I paid him was probably the difference between them being able to live together and Stevie being sent to a group home. That's why the restaurant was gloomy that morning last August, the first morning in 3 years that Stevie had missed work. Stevie was at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. He was getting a valve or something put into his heart. His social worker said people with Down syndromes often have heart problems at an early age, so this wasn't totally unexpected. And there was a good chance he would come through the surgery in good shape and be back at work in a few months. Well, a ripple of excitement ran through the staff later in the morning when word came that he was out of surgery, in recovery, and doing fine. Franny, our head waitress, let out a war whoop and did a little dance in the aisle when she heard the good news. Bell Ringer, one of our regular truck customers, stared at the sight of this 50-year-old grandmother of 4 doing a victory dance beside his table. Franny blushed, smoothed her apron, and shot Bell Ringer a withering look. He grinned. "Okay, Franny, what's this all about?" "Well," she said, "we just got word that Stevie is out of surgery and doing okay. I was wondering where he was. I had a new joke to tell him. What was the surgery about?" Franny quickly told Bellringer and the other two drivers sitting at his booth about Stevie's surgery. And then she sighed and said, "Yeah, I'm glad he's going to be okay. But I don't know how he and his mom are going to handle all the bills. From what I hear, they're barely getting by as it is." Bellringer nodded thoughtfully, and Franny hurried off to wait on the rest of the tables. Since I hadn't had time to round up a new busboy to replace Stevie, and really didn't want to replace him, the waitresses were bussing their own tables that day until we decided what to do. After the morning rush, Franny walked into my office, and she had a couple of paper napkins in her hand and a funny look on her face. "What's up?" I asked. "Well, I didn't get a chance to clear the table where Bellringer and his friends were sitting, and after they left, Pony Pete and Tony Tipper were sitting there when I got back to clear it off." She then went on to tell me that there was a folded and tucked under a coffee cup this napkin. Franny handed me the napkin, and 3 $20 bills fell onto my desk when I opened it. On the outside, in big, bold letters, was printed, "Something for Stevie." Pony Pete had asked me what this was all about, and I told him so that Stevie and his mom were having problems, and Stevie had surgery, and Pete looked at Tony, and Tony looked at Pete, and then they gave me this. And she handed me another napkin, and it had "Something for Stevie" scrawled on its outside. 2 $50 bills were tucked within its folds. Franny looked at me with wet, shiny eyes, shook her head, and simply said, "Truckers." Well, that was 3 months ago. Today is Thanksgiving, the first day Stevie is supposed to be back to work. His placement counselor said he's been counting the days until the doctor said he could work, and it didn't matter at all that it was a holiday. Stevie called 10 times in the past week, making sure we knew he was coming, fearful that we'd forgotten him or that his job was in jeopardy. I arranged to have his mother bring him to work, met them in the parking lot, and invited them both to celebrate his day back. Stevie was thinner and paler, but couldn't stop grinning as he pushed through the doors and headed for the back room where his apron and bussing cart were held and waiting for him. "Hold up, Stevie, not so fast," I said. I took him and his mother by their arms. "Work can wait for a few minutes. To celebrate your coming back, breakfast for you and your mother is on me." I led them to a large corner booth in the rear of the room. I could feel and hear the rest of the staff behind me as we marched through the dining room. Glancing over my shoulder, I saw booth after booth of grinning truckers empty and join in the procession. We stopped in front of a big table, its surface covered with coffee cups, saucers, and dinner plates, all sitting slightly crooked on dozens of folded paper napkins. "First thing you have to do, Stevie, is clean up this mess." I tried to sound stern when I told him that. Stevie looked at me, and then at his mother, and then pulled out one of the napkins. It had "Something for Stevie" printed on the outside. As he picked it up, 2 $10 bills fell onto the table. Stevie stared at the money, then at the napkins peeking from beneath the tableware, each with his name printed or scrawled on it. I turned to his mother. "There's more than $10,000 in cash and checks on that table, all from truckers and trucking companies that heard about your problems. Happy Thanksgiving." Well, it got real noisy about that time, with everybody hollering and shouting, and there were a few tears as well. But you know what's funny? While everybody else was busy shaking hands and hugging each other, Stevie, with a big smile on his face, was busy clearing all the cups and dishes from the table. The best worker I ever hired.